Hi everyone, my name is Luna, and welcome to your tutorial on exploring SAS Enterprise Guide 8. Enterprise Guide has a lot of capabilities and functionality to help you explore and analyze your data. So whether you want to access different types of data, prepare your data, use point-and-click tasks and wizards to generate SAS code, or write your own SAS code to help you analyze and report on your data, or even if you want to take advantage of Enterprise Guide project features, which we'll talk about in just a bit. Enterprise Guide has many tools available that'll make working with your data a little bit easier. So whether you are a SAS programmer and you'd like to write SAS programs, or you'd like Enterprise Guide to generate the code for you by using point-and-click tasks, Enterprise Guide has got you covered. So in this tutorial, we're going to look at both sides. We'll start by navigating through the interface, and then we'll take a look at the point-and-click aspect. So we'll see how we can prepare our data using a robust query builder, and also how we can generate reports by taking a look at the bar chart task. Then we'll take a look at the programming side and take a look at some of those programming features that Enterprise Guide makes available. So whether you are a new user to Enterprise Guide, or maybe you're just new to SAS Enterprise Guide 8, you've used previous versions of Enterprise Guide before, but 8 is new to you, there is something in this tutorial for everyone. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Before we take a look and demo these different features, I want to get some of that foundation down and go a little bit behind the scenes. So first off is, how does SAS Enterprise Guide work? Well, keep in mind that Enterprise Guide is an interface to SAS. So SAS itself may be on your local PC, or it may be on a remote server. Either way, Enterprise Guide is going to prepare your code. Now, this code may be something that you wrote yourself in a SAS program, or it may have been generated for you through those point-and-click tasks. Either way, Enterprise Guide prepares the code and sends the code to SAS for processing. SAS will go ahead and execute that code, and then it's going to go ahead and deliver the results back to Enterprise Guide for you to view. So that's just a little bit of the work that goes on behind the scenes here. Now for us, what you're probably used to if you've used Enterprise Guide before is this concept of project. A lot of the work that you in Enterprise Guide is in this concept of a project. And a project is really a collection of different types of files that you work with in Enterprise Guide. So this could include shortcuts to data, your SAS programs and log, task and query, so those are those point-and-click tools, any results that you get from your SAS programs and your tasks, queries, and wizards, and maybe even some informational notes for documentation as well. With projects, all of these get packaged into one single file with the .egp extension for Enterprise Guide Project. Now, if you're working with tasks and wizards and queries, then an Enterprise Guide project will be required. However, starting with Enterprise Guide 8.1, if you are a SAS programmer and you want to really just use Enterprise Guide to open up different types of data and write SAS programs, you actually have the option to do that without using a project at all. But keep in mind that projects do have their advantages. Remember, projects are not just about saving all the files in one single file, but it allows you to control the content, the sequencing, and updating of the items within a project. So it's a really great organizational tool. With some of that foundation down, let's go ahead and see how we can take advantage of some of the features that are available in Enterprise Guide. Let's go ahead and get started by talking about how to navigate through the SAS Enterprise Guide interface. I have Enterprise Guide opened up, and I'll specifically be working with Enterprise Guide 8.2. If you want to know which version of Enterprise Guide you have, you'll want to go to Help and select About SAS Enterprise Guide. Next to version, you'll see your version number. So again, I have 8.2, but if you have 8.1, it'll look really similar to what I have here. I'll go ahead and click OK, and let's talk about the layout of the interface. At the top is the main menus and toolbar. On the right-hand side, which takes up most of the application window, is going to be the work area. And on the left-hand side, we have the navigation area. Let's talk about the work area and navigation area in a little bit more depth. With the work area, as you open up tables and SAS programs and you run tasks and you want to take a look at those results, you'll see them listed as individual tabs in the work area. So this is a tab-based interface. Now, by default, in the work area, you'll see the Start page. And this is just a great way to get started. You can quickly create new programs and projects, open up existing files, access Enterprise Guide learning resources, or even access the SAS community. In addition, as you open up different types of files, you actually see them on the Start page because you'll see a list of recent items. And you can even pin items to the Start page as well. So that's a little bit about the work area. Let's talk about the navigation area. By default, you'll see 7 panes here. The first pane is the project pane. So if you're working in an Enterprise Guide project, you'll see that project listed here and also the contents of project as well. Next is the Open Items pane, and the Open Items pane will list all the tabs or files that you have open in the work area. You can use this pane to quickly save all the files, quickly close out of all those files. It's really a great organization and management tool for everything that you have open in the work area. Next is going to be the Git repositories pane. This provides access to basic Git features to track changes or manage version control among multiple users. And this is a new pane starting with Enterprise Guide 8.2. Coming down, we have the servers pane. This displays a list of servers that are known to Enterprise Guide. We have the SAS folders pane. This will display a list of SAS folders that you can access. The task pane, so all those point and click tasks that you can access. And finally, the prompt manager pane to go ahead and manage all the prompts that you have. And this will allow for user input in SAS programs and tasks. So that's a little bit about the layout. Let's go ahead and start by adding in a table to Enterprise Guide. So I'm going to go ahead and select the servers pane. I'm going to go ahead and expand the name of my server, which is called local. Libraries, and from the SAS help library, I'm going to locate the class table. Let's go ahead and double click on the class table, and that opens up the table in a separate tab in the work area. Now, one neat feature starting with Enterprise Guide 8.1 is the ability to freely move around the panes and tabs that we have. Now, to do this, you can right-click on the tab, like Class, and select Float. Or you can simply drag that tab to wherever you'd like. You can move it around freely within the application window. If you have multiple monitors, you can drag this out to a separate monitor, or you can take advantage of the layout guide to dock it in the bottom half of the work area or the right half, for example. Now to dock this back into its original location, you can right-click the class tab and select Dock as Tab Document, or you can simply drag the class tab back to where it came from. Right? So this is a really great feature. If you want to program and look at your data at the same time, you can take advantage of this. Or if you just want to look at multiple tables at the same time, you can take advantage of this as well. Next, let's go ahead and open up a SAS program that relates to this class table. To do this, you can go to File and then Open, but that same Open icon is available on my toolbar. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that Open a File icon, which is just a quick shortcut. I'll go to my computer, browse, and I'm going to open up my Enterprise Guide 8 Demo 1 SAS program by selecting it and then clicking Open. So here's my SAS program, and probably the first thing you notice is that my code is on the left-hand side, and then my log tab is on the right-hand side. Now, these sub-tabs, just like my tabs and the panes, can be moved around freely. You can drag them around to wherever you'd like. But if you want a certain layout for all your SAS programs, what you can do is go to View and select Program Tab Presets. Now, right now, it's at that 1-to-1 vertical split, but I'm going to change this to Standard. And that way, the Code tab and the Log tab are now together. With that, let's actually go ahead and run this program. To run the program, I can click on Run, or you can use the F3 key on your keyboard. But I'm going to click on Run. The program executes, and now we have a Results and Output Data tab. But by default, we see the Results tab has opened up. With the results, you'll notice that the default output format is HTML, And if you'd like to zoom in on the results here, you can go ahead and hold down your control key and scroll up on your mouse. That'll make it a little bit easier to see the results. Next, let's go ahead and look at the Output Data tab. So I'll click Output Data. I simply made a copy of that class table, so I see that represented here. And I want to show you one cool thing that you can do here. Let's say I'd like to open this table up in Excel. A really quick way to do this is to right-click the name of the table, which I called it Class Metric, select Share, and then Send to Microsoft Excel. So this is going to go ahead and send that data over to Microsoft Excel, and after a couple of seconds, here we go. I have that same exact data now over in Excel. And I could go ahead and save this file or make further modifications to it from within Excel. I'm going to go ahead and close this without saving it, but just know that that feature is available. Let's go ahead and take a look at the last tab, which is the Log tab. The Log tab is how we see messages returned back from SAS. And at the top, we have our log summary. And this is just a really quick way to see any errors, warnings, or notes that might have been returned from SAS. So that was a really quick look at the interface. Now that we know how to navigate through the SAS Enterprise Guide interface, let's go ahead and start talking about some of those point-and-click tasks. The first one I'd like to show you is a querying tool called the Query Builder. And the Query Builder allows us to manipulate our data. In this demonstration, I'll show you how we can use the Query Builder to subset our rows and columns, create new columns, and filter and sort our rows. Now, in order to use the Query Builder or other point-and-click tasks and wizards, a project is required. So I'm going to start by creating a new project. I'll go to File, New, and then select Project. Now you'll notice that as soon as I created a project, a process flow was automatically created. Now to help explain this, I'm going to back up one step. I like to think of my projects as the entire story that I'm trying to tell. Because remember, if you're working in this concept of a project, all the files that you open and work with get saved in that single .egp Enterprise Guide project file. Now within projects or within your story, you tend to have chapters, and that's what process flows are. They help us break up and organize all the work that we're doing inside of our Enterprise Guide project. In addition, as we start adding files to our project and we start running tasks and programs, you actually see those items represented in the process flow, and you'll even see the relationship among the items as well. We'll see that in just a little bit. So that's a little bit about projects and process flows. But let's actually take a look at the Query Builder now. I'm going to start by adding some data to my project. So I'm going to use the Servers pane. I'll expand Servers, my server name, which is local, libraries, and from the SAS Help library, I'd like to work with the cars table. Before I open this up, a little side note here. If I right-click on cars, you'll notice the default behavior, which is bolded, is to open and add the table to the project. Meaning, if I double-click on cars in the Servers pane, it'll physically open up the file for me to view in the work area, and the cars table will automatically be added into my project. But that's not the only option you have. When I right-click, I can also choose to just open the file, meaning open the table for me to view, but don't add it to my project. Or I can choose Add to Project, which adds the file to the project, but will not open it up for me to view by default. So again, you have some options here. If you want to change the default behavior, just to show you where that is, you can go to Tools, Options, and then in the Options window, you'll select Project and Process Flows. And you can clear this option that says when an item is open, automatically add to the project, meaning that if you open up a file, it will no longer be automatically added to the project. You'll manually have to add the items you want to your project. I'm going to stick with the default behavior, so I'll go ahead and click Cancel, but I just wanted to show you that option exists. All right, back in the Servers pane, I'll double-click on Cars. And again, that opens up the table for me to view, and it adds the cars table to my project, specifically to the active process flow. Because I only have one, it's going to get added to that single process flow. Now with this example, what I'd like to do is calculate the profit of sedans. So that's going to require some data manipulation. Let's go ahead and start the Query Builder by clicking on the Query Builder button on the Data Grid toolbar. Okay, here's the Query Builder. Now, the first thing I like to do is give my query a more descriptive name. That's going to be the label you see within your project and process flows, and also change the output table name as well. So for the query name, I'll go ahead and delete the default name and call it Cars Profit Query. And then I'll click Change and change the output table name. Let's call it Cars underscore Profit. And I'll go ahead and click Save. All right, now on the left-hand side, you'll see that I have all the columns from the cars table listed. And if I want to see any of these columns in my output table, cars profit, I need to include them on this select data tab. And there's several ways you can do this. First, let's say I want to add a range of columns. So I want to add everything from make all the way down to invoice. To do that, I can select make, hold down my shift key, select invoice, and then drag all of those columns onto the select data tab. You can also pick and choose individual columns. So for example, I can simply double click on MPG City, or I can drag MPG Highway as another example onto the select data tab. You can even use your control key to select multiple columns and bring them onto the select data tab as well. Now, I again want to know the profit value, but I don't have a column that contains that information. I need to calculate that myself. So to create a new column, I'm going to click on this calculator icon on the right-hand side, which says Add a new computed column. This is going to start the new computed column wizard, and it's just 4 quick steps to define a new column. The first step is to choose what type of column I want to create. This is going to involve an arithmetic expression. So I'm going to choose Advanced Expression and click Next. In step 2, I'm going to specify the expression for this new column. Now I can directly type in the expression in this expression box, or I can choose columns, functions, and operators to include in that expression. I'm going to go with the latter method. So in order to calculate profit, it's going to be the difference between MSRP and invoice. So I'm going to expand where it says selected columns. These are all the columns that I brought over onto the select data tab. And to include, let's say, MSRP, for example, in the expression box, I can just double click MSRP. That gets added into my expression. Then I need to subtract, so I'll click on the subtraction operator, and then double click on invoice. That's it. Now this might be a little bit small, so if you want to hold down on your control key and scroll up on your mouse, you can easily zoom in on that expression. Now you'll notice that in front of the name of the column, there's T1 dot. T1 is a table alias or nickname. So it's a nickname for the cars table. It doesn't hurt to have in this scenario, but it's also not necessary. So if you wanted to delete that, that's totally fine. But that is it for this expression. So I'm going to click Next, move on to step 3. Step 3 is where I'm going to specify some properties for this new column. So for example, the column name, instead of just leaving it as calculation, I'm going to call it profit. And because I like to display these values as currency values, I'm going to apply a format. So in the format field, I'm going to click Change. Again, it's going to be a currency value, so I'll select the currency category. Let's go with the $W.D format. The dollar format's going to add dollar signs and commas to our values. And I'm going to go ahead and increase the overall width to 10. Just to make sure there's enough room to include the dollar sign, the commas, and all the values that I want to display. All right, that looks good. I'll go ahead and click OK. And that's all I need to do in step 3. I'll click Next. Step 4 is just a quick summary. Everything looks good, so I'll click Finish. You'll notice that the new profit column is automatically added to my Select Data tab and is included as a column in that list of columns. It's under Computed Columns now. Because it's included in this list of columns, I can now use profit to filter my data or even sort my data as well. Before I move on to the other filter data and sort data tabs, one thing I'd like to point out about the select data tab is that the order that the columns are listed is the order the columns will appear in the new output table. So you can go ahead and drag the columns around in the select data tab to change the order, or you can take advantage of these arrows on the right-hand side. So to show you, I'm going to select profit, and I'm going to click on this move up arrow twice, so I can have profit immediately after invoice. And again, you can move these around freely within the select data tab. All right, I have all the columns I want. Now let's filter our rows. I'm going to click on the filter data tab. And remember, I'm only interested in sedans. So in order to create a filter, I'm going to go ahead and filter on the type column. So I will drag type onto the filter data tab. The new filter wizard opens up. 2 very quick steps here. I want type to be equal to, and I want that value to be sedan. Now, I could type that in here, or an easier way is to click this drop-down arrow. And on the Values tab, click Get Values. And what this does is SAS is going to look at the input cars table and provide us with a list of values for the type column, so the unique values that are in the type column. There's sedan, so I'll go ahead and click sedan, and my filter is good to go. So I'll only see cars where the type is equal to sedan. I'll click Next. Step 2 is again just another properties verification page. Everything looks good, so I'll click Finish. One last step is to go ahead and sort our table, so I'll click on the Sort Data tab. And let's go ahead and sort on that new column that we created, Profit. So this time I'll just double click on Profit. That gets added to the Sort Data tab. The default sort direction is ascending. I'm going to go ahead and use a drop-down arrow and change that to descending. So I'll see the cars with the highest profit listed first, and then it'll go down from there. That is everything that I wanted to do in this query builder. So let's go ahead and click Run. And let's take a look at our new output table. All right, so here's our new output table. I only see the columns that I chose. You'll see the profit column is the difference between the MSRP and invoice columns. And this was sorted by the profit column. So I see those rows or those cars that had the higher profit values listed first, and then it goes down from there. And of course, the filter I applied where type is equal to sedan. So it looks pretty good. Now, since this is a new output table, I could take this output table and use it as an input to other analytical tasks to further analyze, let's say, the profit of these sedan cars. One last thing I'd like to show you is go ahead and click on the Code tab. These point-and-click tasks or querying tools that we use in Enterprise Guide generate SAS code behind the scenes. And here we can actually see that SAS code. If you want to make further modifications, you can always click on Modify Task to go back into the task itself, or you can make a copy of the code that you see here and add in some of your own code if you'd like as well. So that's a little bit about the query builder to help us manipulate our data. In this next demonstration, I'd like to show you a different point-and-click task. This time, we'll see how to create graphs, specifically bar charts using the bar chart task. We'll see how we can really customize the look of the bar chart, how to add in code into the task-generated code, and also how to modify the output formats. Now for this demonstration, I'm going to start off where we left off in the previous demonstration, which is where we used the query builder. In the query builder, we created the cars profit query, and we subsetted the cars table to create cars profit. Now in cars profit, I'm only looking at sedans, and I also calculated the profit value of each car. What I'd like to do in this demonstration is to create a bar chart based off of this table. I would like the bar chart to show the average profit value by the car make, and I'd also like to have separate bar charts for each origin value. So one for Asia, one for Europe, and then one for USA. Now to get started on this bar chart, I'm first going to make sure that I have the car's profit table opened up. If you closed out of it, in the project pane, you can double click on car's profit query and that'll open up that car's profit table for you. With the table open, I'm going to go to the task pane, expand the graph category, and then double click on bar chart. This will start the bar chart task with the car's profit table as input. Now, the first thing to do in the bar chart task is to specify what type of bar chart I'd like to create. I would like a vertical bar chart with different colored bars, so I'll select vertical colored bar. Next, I'm going to go to Data in the selection pane. In Data, I can verify the input table, so that's car's profit. And if I click on Edit, I can actually apply a simple filter to my input table. So I already applied a filter to my table from the Query Builder, so I won't need to do that here, but just know that you have that option available. Now, also in Data, I need to assign my different columns to different task roles. These task roles determine how the column will be used in this task. If you want to learn more about this particular task role, or you want to learn more about the different options that are available in the bar chart task, you'll want to click on the Help button in the bottom right-hand corner of the task window. You will see this Help button in many of the tasks that you use in Enterprise Guide, and it is going to be context sensitive. So because I clicked on that Help button in the Data panel of the bar chart task, I am taken to a documentation page that's specific to the data panel of the bar chart task. So as you see here, I see those different task roles along with a quick description of those different task roles as well. If you scroll through that selection pane on the left-hand side, you see all of those different tasks that are available in Enterprise Guide. So definitely take advantage of help to learn more about the tasks that you're using and all the other tasks that we have available in Enterprise Guide. For now, I'm going to go ahead and close the browser, go ahead and close the documentation, and go back into the bar chart task. Now again, we want to create a bar chart that shows the average profit value by make with separate bar charts for each origin value. So I'm going to go ahead and assign make to the column to chart role. And to do that, I can just drag make and drop it onto that column to chart role. Now I want the bar height to be the average profit value, so I'm going to take profit and drag it to the sum of role. Finally, to have separate bar charts for each origin value, I'm just going to show you a different way of assigning columns to task roles. I'm going to select origin, click on the plus arrow, and then select group charts by. So that's just another way to assign columns to task roles. Now, as the sum of role task name implies, or the task role name implies, sum of, this is going to go ahead and by default make the bar height the total profit, but I want the average profit instead. So to change that, in the selection pane, I'm going to advance. So this is advanced under the appearance category. I'm going to change the statistic used to calculate the bar to average. And I'd also like to see the average value represented in the bar chart. So I'm going to select the checkbox that says specify one statistical value to show for bars and use the drop-down menu to change that to average. Last thing for now is to specify titles. So I'll click on titles in the selection pane. I'll clear the use default text checkbox. And I'm going to delete the default title of bar chart. And let's go with average profit by make. Let's go ahead and give it a run. I didn't make too many customizations, but let's see what we have, and then we'll make further customizations. So I'll click run. Right, let's take a look at our bar charts here. So you'll see I have one bar for each car make, and that bar height represents the average profit value. As you can see, the vertical axis is labeled as profit mean right now. I see my title, average profit by make, and I have 3 separate bar charts. One for origin Asia, another for Europe, and at the very bottom I have one for USA. Now if you take a look at my USA bar chart, you'll notice that the labels aren't properly displayed. My make values, some of them are a little bit too long, so they don't properly fit in my horizontal axis. I want to go ahead and modify this to properly display the values. So to go back into the bar chart to make further customizations, on the task toolbar, I'm going to click on Modify Task. This will go right back into the bar chart task where we left off so we can make those extra customizations. Let's start with those horizontal axis values. To make some changes to that, I'm going to select Axis under the horizontal axis category. Again, this is about the values, so I'll select the Values tab. And I'm going to use the Value Rotation drop-down menu to change that to 45. This will display those labels at a 45-degree angle, and that'll make those values fit in a little bit nicer. Let's go ahead and make some changes to the vertical axis as well. So I'll select Axis under Vertical Axis. And remember that the default label was Profit Mean. I'm going to simplify this to just Profit. While we're here, let's go ahead and add in some reference lines. So I'll click on Reference Lines under Vertical Axis. I'll select the Use Reference Lines checkbox. I'll change the style to dashed. And for the color, I'll go with a lighter gray color, specifically gray 25%. So I added in some extra customizations. I'll go ahead and click Run. And let's see our updated bar chart. We see our nice label on our vertical axis, Profit. We see the values of the horizontal axis are now at a 45-degree angle, and we see the reference lines. It makes it a little bit easier to see our values. I'll scroll down and check the USA bar chart. And we see that those values fit nicely now that they're at a 45-degree angle. I'd like to make a couple more last changes. You'll notice that in each bar chart, there's this extra title, Origin equals Asia, Europe, or USA. Now, I didn't specify this title. This is added in by default when you use that group charts by rule. What I'd like to do instead is to go ahead and get rid of this extra title. This is called a byline, and represent the origin value in the title directly. Now to do this, I'm going to make some changes to the title, but I also need to make some changes to the code that the task generated as well. So let's go ahead and go back into Modify Task, make a couple of last changes here. First, let's make some changes to the title. I'll click on Titles, and I'm going to go ahead and extend the title. So I'll say Average Profit by Make in # by val, and in parentheses, origin. Right. So this is interesting notation. Whenever you have # by val and in parentheses the name of the group charts by column, which in our case is origin, that entire portion will be replaced with the origin value. So I'll see average profit by make in Asia, in Europe, in USA in my title instead. Now, because I'm representing that origin value in the title, I no longer need that byline. Now, to get rid of the byline, that is not an option that's available in the bar chart task, but it is something that I can do with code. So to add in just a little bit of code to make that change, I'm going to click on where it says Preview Code. Now, by default in the Code Preview for Task window, I'm really just viewing the code that's generated behind the scenes. However, if I select the Show Custom Code Insertion Points checkbox, as I scroll through the code, you'll notice sections that say Insert Custom Code here. If I click on that, it allows me to type in some code in predefined areas. So I'm going to take advantage of that to go ahead and turn off the byline. In the very first insertion point, I'm going to click where it says Insert Custom Code here, and I'm going to type an option statement. I'll say options, and I'll say no byline. This means to go ahead and turn off those bylines and get rid of them. Now, when you turn off an option like this, it's usually a good idea to turn it back on at the very end. So I'm going to scroll to the very, very bottom of the code, look for the last insertion point, click on where it says Insert Custom Code here, and I'll type options byline. This is just reinstating the byline for future tasks. All right, the code is good to go. I'm going to go ahead and click the X to close out of this window, and that'll save that extra code that I typed in. I'd like to do just a couple more things while I'm in here. First is changing the label of this task. Now, the default label is just the name of the task, bar chart, but if you had multiple bar charts in your project, it would be hard to distinguish each of them. So I'm going to make it a little bit more descriptive. To do this, I'm going to click on Properties in the selection pane, click Edit, and in the label field, I'll delete bar chart, and I'll just type average profit by make. Another thing that I can do here is change the output format. The default output format is HTML, but maybe I'd like something else. To make that change, in the selection pane in the Properties window, I'm going to click on Results. Again, the default is HTML, but I'm going to click on where it says Customize Result Format, Styles, and Behavior, and now I have a lot of different options for my output format. What I'll do in this scenario is, in addition to HTML, also select PDF. Now, next to each of these output formats, you'll notice there's a drop-down menu. This drop-down menu allows me to pick a style. Now, a style is going to control the overall appearance of the bar chart. So the coloring that's used, the font size that's used, and more. Just to show you an example of what these styles look like, for HTML, I'm going to use the drop-down menu and select the Meadow style. And for PDF, I'll use the drop-down menu and I will select the Seaside style. Okay, I'll go ahead and click OK. And those are the last changes I'm going to make, so I'm going to go ahead and click Run. Let's take a look at our final results now. Here is the updated HTML results. Now first, notice the title. I see average profit by make in Asia. If I scroll down, in Europe, and then in USA. I no longer see the byline because I turned that off. And you'll notice that because I applied a style, the Meadow style, the color scheme and just the overall look of the bar chart looks a little bit different. Let's take a look at those PDF results. In the Results tab, there's now a tab for PDF. I can go ahead and double click on that. This will open up the PDF file outside of Enterprise Guide in the default application. And now I have the same exact result, but in the PDF file. So here's Asia. If I scroll down, I have Europe. And scrolling further is USA. And this has that Seaside style applied to it. All right, let me go ahead and close out of this tab. And I'm going to go ahead and close average profit by make, cars profit query, the cars table, and I want to take a look at the process flow now. I mentioned way earlier that the process flow shows us the whole story, and we can see that here. We see that the cars table is the input to the cars profit query, and the query created an output table called cars profit. Then we took cars profit into the average profit by make bar chart task, and then the bar chart created two outputs. One was in an HTML format, and then another in the PDF format. Now with this process flow, there's a couple of options I can use here. Let's say maybe a table is updated and I'd like to rerun tasks related to it. I can take advantage of run options. So for example, here if I click on cars profit query, I can click the drop-down arrow next to run to see my different run options here. Run selected items, running just the item that's selected. Run process flow runs everything in the process flow. I can do a run to the selected item or run from the selected item. So again, if I need to update something in a project, I don't have to run my entire project. I can just choose to run portions of my project instead, which is more efficient. Just to show you an example, I'm going to click on Run Process Flow. And you can see that the entire process flow runs in the order of the arrows that I have here. So that's how to use the bar chart task. I'm going to go ahead and close this project. I'll go to File, Close Project. There's no need to save the project, so I'll click Don't Save. And we'll go into the next demonstration. In this last demonstration, I'd like to switch gears and talk about the programming side of Enterprise Guide. I'll show you a couple of programming features such as formatting code, using the Dataset Debugger, and taking advantage of autocomplete. Now you might remember that if you want to use Enterprise Guide to just open data and write SAS programs, projects are not required. So I've already closed out of the Enterprise Guide project that I was using in previous demonstrations. However, you can include programs as part of your Enterprise Guide project, so just keep that in mind. To start off on this demonstration, I'm going to click on the Open a File icon on the toolbar to open up an existing SAS program. I'll go to my computer, and because I've already accessed the file from this specific location, I'll select the folder in the Recent Locations list and double-click on Enterprise Guide 8 Demo 2. Now, looking at this program, you'll notice that it's not spaced in a consistent format. To quickly format this code, on the Program Editor toolbar, I'm going to click on the Format Code button. Now you'll notice that before formatting the code, I actually have a formatting error saying, please check for an unmatched quote on line 3. I'll click OK. And if I look at the contents of line 3, you'll notice that I have quote, average, and I did not close this quote. So I'll go ahead and add in a closing quote. Right? You'll see that some of the color coding has now returned. And I'll go ahead and click on the Format Code button one more time. And now our code looks much better. It is much easier on the eyes and to understand what's going on. So another tool I'd like to show you here is the Data Step Debugger. Now I have a data step in this program. It goes from data all the way to run. And the data step allows us to manipulate our data. Now to better understand what this data step is doing and how it's processing, we can use the Data Step Debugger. To enable it, I'm going to click on the Debug button on the Program Editor toolbar. And you'll notice that on the left-hand side, it'll highlight anything that is a part of a data step. To start the Data Step Debugger, you can click on the bug icon or anywhere in this green margin. So I'll go ahead and click on the bug. With the Data Step Debugger, I can execute data step statements statement by statement to follow the logic of what's going on in the data step. So the first thing is I want to go ahead and run the highlighted statement. This is a step statement. It's going to read in the first row from the input table. To execute just this line, I'm going to click on this button that says Step Execution to Next Line. And on the right-hand side, I see the first row from that class table. And now I'm going to go into this conditional processing block. I'm looking at height value, and depending on the height value, assigning some value to height cat. Now the height for the row that I'm looking at is 69. So 69 is greater than 65. So I'll go ahead and execute that. Therefore, this new column height cat will have a value of above average. If I execute this, we'll see height cat, and I'll go ahead and expand this so we can see it a little easier. Has that value of above average. Now, because I've already reached a true condition, all of my other else if and else statements have been entirely skipped, and I can actually see that with the Data Step Debugger. I'm going to go ahead and step over to the next line, and let's read in the second row. In the second row, the height value is 56.5, so it's not greater than 65. Move on to the next statement. It is not between 58 and 65, so it's going to come to the catch-all else statement. If I execute it, height cat will now be below average. And you can continue on in this manner to follow the logic of that data step. For now, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Run button to go ahead and go through the entire rest of the data step. I see debugging is now complete, so I'll go ahead and close the Data Step Debugger. The Data Step Debugger is really useful if you have a logic error in your program. You'll be able to step through, again, statement by statement to see where exactly that error is occurring. I'm done with the debugger, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the Debug button to suppress the debugger. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in some extra code to this program, and I'm going to do this by taking advantage of autocomplete. So I'm going to come to the end of my program, and I'm going to come to a new line. What I'd like to do is use a proc mean step to calculate some summary statistics. I'm going to start by typing PR. And notice that the autocomplete window appears and it highlights the word proc. Since I want to enter in the highlighted keyword, I'm going to press the spacebar. That enters in proc along with the space. Next, I see different types of procedures that are available for me to use in SAS. I want the means procedure, so I'll type ME. Means is highlighted, so I'll do the same thing again. Hit the spacebar. That'll add in the highlighted word means along with the space. Next, in autocomplete, I see a list of valid options for a proc means statement. Now, if you want to learn more about one of these options, like data equals, for example, you can simply hover over that option. You get quick information. It says this identifies the input SAS dataset. I'd like to include this, so I'm going to go ahead and double click on data equals and include that into my statement. I'm going to go ahead and use autocomplete to go ahead and type out the rest of the statement. So I'll type work, so I'll type a W, a period, and go ahead and include in the class height table. I'll add in another option, max des equals, with the value of 1, and then semicolon. Right? It's a lot easier to type this whenever using autocomplete. I'll come to a new line, and this time I'm going to use a var statement. A var statement specifies which numeric columns I'd like to analyze. So once I type var and then hit the space bar, you'll actually see the numeric columns in my input table class height. I'd like to analyze the weight column, so I'll go ahead and type a W. That'll highlight weight, and then I'll type a semicolon. This will enter in weight, and then end the statement with that semicolon. I'll use autocomplete to go ahead and finish the rest of this proc means statement. I'll use a class statement, and I will go ahead and do this on the height cat column. I'll double click on it. And at the very end, I will have a run statement. If you'd like, you could click on the format code button again to go ahead and quickly format the code. Now, I like to take advantage of autocomplete and the integrated syntax help. However, if you would like to turn that off, you can quickly do that. You'll want to go to Program, select Editor Options, and then go to the Autocomplete tab. Here, you can clear the Enable Autocomplete checkbox and also the Enable Integrated Syntax Help checkbox as well, if you'd like to turn those off. You can also go to the Indenter tab to go ahead and change the rules that are used for formatting the code. I'm going to stick with the defaults, but just know that you have that option available to you. Okay. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this code, and I want to run just the proc mean step. So I'm going to highlight the proc mean step, and I could click the run button. That'll run just the highlighted portion, or I can use the F3 key on my keyboard. I'll click the run button. That go ahead and runs that proc mean step. And here we go. We have our results right here. So those are just a couple of the programming features that we have available in Enterprise Guide. We are at the very end of this tutorial, and I hope you found the information to be very helpful. I'd like to leave off with a couple of resources that might be of interest to you. If you're interested in learning more about those point-and-click tasks that are available in Enterprise Guide, I would recommend taking the SAS Enterprise Guide 1 Querying and Reporting course. If you'd like to see more of those programming features that are available, I would suggest SAS Enterprise Guide for experienced SAS programmers. We saw a quick look at the SAS Enterprise Guide documentation, but there is also a programming documentation and more. So to check those out, go to support.sas.com/documentation. Finally, there are plenty of free SAS Enterprise Guide tutorials for you to take advantage of, so make sure to go to support.sas.com/tutorial to check those out. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found it helpful.